ever wonder if your dog is at risk of being stolen? You hear about this once in a while. How big a problem is the theft of dogs anyway? We've been wondering about this for quite a while, and I'm pleased to welcome a real expert in this area, Kathy Poblosky. She is director and co-founder of Lost Dogs of Wisconsin and co-director of Lost Dogs of America. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, welcome. So do we have a handle on the scope of dog theft in the United States? How big a problem is this?
Well, we think that we do because we take in reports every day all around the country for missing dogs. And we take in literally hundreds of reports every day. But what we have found in our 8 years of experience at doing this is that when a dog goes missing, people tend to panic. And when they panic, they got unclear thinking. They don't really think through the whole problem that we like to really approach logically. And they often assume their dog has been stolen. So they report a stolen dog, but then as we work them through the process, we find that their dog really was not stolen after all, and that the dog was simply lost. Or the other really, really common scenario, by far probably our most common scenario, is that the dog was picked up by somebody who meant to keep it out of harm's way, and then possibly did the wrong thing by either keeping the dog or rehoming the dog or taking the dog to the wrong shelter, things like that. Yeah. So in the grand scheme of things, when we look at everything at the end of the day, the percentage of stolen dogs is still very, very small. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does, but it's very small. And what we define as a stolen dog is that it is a crime of intent. So somebody actually broke into your house, your business, your yard, your car, and took your dog just like they would take your jewelry or your television set or whatever. And again, that is something that we find that, yes, it does happen, but it does not happen nearly as often as the media has led people on to believe. Okay, and I have a bit of an example about that, because when the media catches onto when somebody reports their dog stolen and it gets put out there in the media, that makes big headlines. And but when that dog is found, and it was found that it really was never stolen after all, that is very, very rarely reported on. So this, kind of swirls around in people's minds, and they assume that there is this huge problem out there. And I actually looked back at an old story that we had actually reported on several years ago, that the American Kennel Club had put out a press release saying that dog napping cases are up by almost 70%. But and that was the headline on the story. And that got spread everywhere. That went to all the major networks because it came from the American Kennel Club. But when you dug right down into the story, they actually, the numbers were so small. So they had 432 pet thefts in 2011, and again, this is all across America, as compared to 255 in 2010. So it was really only although it was a percentage-wise, it was a big increase. It really was not a large number of dogs when you compare that there's about 80 million dogs in the United States.
Yeah. Okay, so acknowledging that the much larger problem is dogs getting lost, right? And we talk about that often on the show, particularly around the upcoming holiday like Halloween and all the things you want to do to keep your dog from bolting and things like that. We do want to just go a little bit more about the theft problem, even if it's smaller than people might think, because it's just so horrible to contemplate. And there's this video that I just came across yesterday that I shared with you of a few dogs. They're in a field behind a fence on a country road, and two guys pull up, and one of them just reaches over and grabs the puppy by the scruff of his neck and puts it in the car, and they're gone. It was shocking. So can you interpret that video or comment on it?
Yes, I saw that video, and yes, it's very troubling. The good thing is, so first of all, we would recommend that if any, that happens to anybody, that immediately they file a police report. And then they do what that homeowner, did, is look at security footage. And you will be amazed at now how popular security cameras are, and it's very likely that somebody in your neighborhood has a camera that maybe has caught an image of what actually happened to your dog. But then, that being said, we have also found that it's sort of like murder when often a person that committed the crime was known to the victim. So when we really do know that a dog is stolen, we ask the owner to first of all think close to home. Is there a disgruntled spouse or family member, or a disgruntled employee, contractor, or somebody that you may owe money to? Or even often it can be an unhappy neighbor, unhappy because the dog was barking too much, or they didn't like the way that you were caring for the dog, or even an animal welfare advocate in the area that didn't feel that you were treating the dog correctly.
Yeah.
And so those are the places that we steer people to first of all, because that's often what has happened, is that somebody, for whatever reason, has a grudge with you and decided that they were going to come and get their comeuppance by taking one of your dogs. Again, I can't say that is what happened in that video. In that video, if the dog was actually stolen for some sort of profit, then we would, and that's what we suspected, then we would recommend that person, of course, file that police report, and then start checking things like Craigslist, neighborhood groups on Facebook, things like that, where people could be trying to sell their dog.
And is that the usual fate of stolen dogs? Are they sold for profit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you will hear, again, really, and again, I don't want to say it never happens, but you will hear really, really overblown stories about dogs being stolen for research labs or for dog fighting, whatever. That very, very seldom happens.
Yeah.
That has really been one of those urban legends that has just gone wildly out of control. For one thing, research labs do not want randomly sourced dogs. They want purebred dogs, genetically pure, that have been bred specifically for research. They don't want to just buy, dogs off the street that they don't know the medical history of or what vaccinations it's had, things like that.
You also hear about dogs being used for fighting training, these bait dogs.
That again, that has been there has been some large organizations look into that, and again, that's been very, very largely overblown. Again, not saying that it never happens, but it's pretty rare. And honestly, we've never come across that in our thousands and thousands of cases here in Wisconsin.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're debunking some of these myths for all of us. So the most important being that it's a much smaller problem than we thought. Are there any others that you want to mention as we conclude here?
I would just say, like, if you think that your dog truly has been stolen, and again, kind of work through that whole scenario first of all, because it's much more likely that your dog got out of the fence and somebody picked the dog up and then, is maybe doing the wrong thing. Maybe they're going to try to sell it for a profit or whatever, but that's not really a stolen dog. That dog was not, the intent was not to steal the dog. The intent was to keep that dog safe at first and get it off of the street, and then they thought, oh, that person really doesn't deserve the dog back because they let it get loose to begin with. So it's really trying to figure out human behavior at that point, which can be very difficult, as I'm sure you know. But if you really truly believe that your dog was stolen and that you've eliminated all the possibilities of people that you know that could have taken your dog for whatever reason, then look at Craigslist, look at the places where animals are being sold online, and that may be where you find them.
Do you find that most dogs are microchipped these days, and does that help in this process?
It depends on what part of the country. It definitely helps. But of course, the animal has to be scanned for it to help. So, we've had dogs that go missing that could live their entire life in another home and never ever be taken to be scanned for a microchip. Yeah. If somebody finds the dog and never even thinks to take it to be scanned for a microchip. And most vets do not scan as a regular part of their services. So somebody specifically has to ask to have the found animal scanned. So, but yes, it definitely helps reunite dogs and cats with their owners if they're scanned. And the popularity of microchipping is definitely increasing, which is great, but it kind of depends on what part of the country you're in, whether you're in a rural area or whether you're in a city, because in some places it's just still cost prohibitive or not just widely available.
Kathy, can you direct our listeners to any of your websites so they can learn more about you and your work?
Absolutely, would love to. So we have our website at Lost Dogs of Wisconsin is www.lostdogsofwisconsin.org. And then after we operated for a few years in Wisconsin, we kind of spread out across the country. And now we have put a lot of our resources on a website called Lost Dogs of America, and that's www.lostdogsofamerica.org.
Kathy Podlaski, thank you so much for visiting with us on Animals Today and giving us this great info.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me.